Hi guys, in this video we're going Oldhammer.
Gruffy Crow.
Okay, I follow Trish Carden on Facebook, and a little while back, apparently December, I spotted this post, and she was saying how many different Manticores she had sculpted over the ages. And I was like, hey, that's cool, that was one of my favourite models. I converted it to have a Chaos guy riding it. These ones were too old, like too Oldhammer for me, and this guy, it was a bit too modern. I've never had one of these guys. Then I spotted this guy, and I was like, hey, that looks somewhat familiar. I feel like I've got some of the parts needed to make that. Just as an aside, I never realised this guy was traditionally sculpted at first before being digitally touched up and made in plastic. But anyway, yeah, this guy. That body looked awfully familiar, and not only that, I knew I had one spare. So I had a ruffle around in some bits boxes and came up with this. So this came as a part of a bulk lot, and I painted a bunch of them up for some Chaos projects that I had, and I knew I had at least one spare that I was maybe thinking of putting back on eBay, but just hadn't got round to, because I'm a hoarder. Now this guy's always fascinated me. It was a while before I actually got one. I could never seem to score one back in the day, but I've always quite liked it. It's a nice model. It's got some good movement to it. And I always thought it was weird because the rest of the Chaos Hounds, when this guy was about, looked completely different. And I have a full set of them these days as well. But yeah, this guy always stood out as being that bit cooler and completely different. Oh, back to the Facebook post. Someone said, yeah, I don't recognise this. And just says that maybe it was a limited release, but who knows. Answers on a postcard or slash in the comments if you do know if this was ever released. I mean, I don't think it was, but we're going to make one today. So yeah, we've got all the base parts, and I've got these wings. I have no idea where they're from. They're resin. They kind of look old. They're definitely traditionally sculpted and then cast in resin. I do not know where they're from. I've had them for a while. I think I bought them off eBay for a different project. Once again, if you know where these are from, let me know. I don't think I've got any other use for them. They're not part of any other model that I own. And they're not quite the same as the ones in this photo. But they're similar enough. So yeah, first things first, I'm going to glue all this together. Oh, if you hadn't guessed, the point of this video is going to be to build something similar to this. So yeah. I've got an MDF base here, which I've just sort of reclaimed, had something else on it at some point. We just chiseled out enough room to put this guy on. That's a 50. I imagine probably, well, I don't know, because he comes in a 50 by 25, this guy normally. So I think he's going to fill this guy out quite nicely. And that whole square base aesthetic will please me, I feel. I would say the obvious place to start is going to be some industrial strength super glue. And we'll glue the sort of Chaos Hound together. Going to be pretty generous. Got all of this stuff. There we go. That's not going anywhere ever without some sort of solvent. And the tail fits real nice in here. Now, for an old model, this goes together. Oh, by the way, I didn't just cut that. This stuff, you do get a kind of bit of working time. But if a model fits together as nicely as this, that's it. Don't need to hold it or anything. Just stick it together. But yeah, this model does go together nice. We will run some green stuff and stuff down there. But it's, for such an old model, it's a very clean fit. You wouldn't be able to see most of these lines by the time you gave it a bit of a spray. And the tail goes on quite a sort of cunning way in that it's sort of hidden the natural sort of fold to the model. Now, to be honest, it's a while since I did sort of Oldhammer, so already I'm really excited by this model. So next up, I've got my little Tamiya handy drill. Now it's playing up recently. I need a new one. There we go. Now this is going to make pinning this much easier. But I'm just going to stick with my normal 1mm wire. If I was doing big metal wings, I might be tempted to go a bit beefier, but I think this should be fine. However, first, I think these guys have got, there's like a ball on the end of this with a sort of nub. I think I am tempted just to sort of carve that into a perfect sphere first. Obviously, always cut away from yourself and not directly into your thumb. That'd be a foolish thing to do. Well, I think we're going to go just behind the shoulder blades for these. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pin straight in the end, and then I'm going to leave a bit of wire, so then we can kind of position these where we want. Shit, went too far, dug out the back there. Let's try not to do that next time. Bit of glue on there. I've got my old sort of workhorse snips. Give myself a generous bit of wire. And I think we want to have the wings come in about there. So equidistant from the sort of shoulder and the main part, giving us plenty of room to sculpt a bit of muscle or something on there. And I'm getting hand cramp just thinking about how hard this would be if I was doing it with a pin vise. Okay, so now we've got some nice deep holes drilled. These should fit in nicely. Okay, and then because we left those nice big tails, we should be able to pose these now how we want them. Now I'm going to try and kind of pose it to the shape of the body. He's sort of coming around this, twisting round, one higher than the other. And we also want the model to look good from a few angles. That fills up the base quite nicely. We might lift this one up a bit further. This is actually coming together way quicker than I thought it would. So I'm going to see if I can get those back out now. I can add a dab of glue and pop them back in. I'm also just going to add a little bit of extra glue with the aid of this old cocktail stick just around this back of this join. And probably not going to do an awful lot, but it might make me feel a little bit better when we get to the next stage. So because this is a gel super glue, it does actually have a little bit of a mass to it. So I sometimes do use it to kind of just keep things where I want them a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to let that completely dry and cure now. I think I'm pretty happy with the position of everything. But I think we'll keep them off the base for now. So the next step is going to be some green stuff after this is dried. Okay, so one wing is now fully green stuffed. I'm going to show you how I did that on this other side. Okay, so we're starting off with a nice solid blob of sort of evenly mixed green stuff. And we're just going to put it into a fat sausage and jam it in that first gap. And I'm going to take the thickest part of this muscle as the sort of the guide for how wide we want this. And we're going to try and match it somewhat to this side as well. I'll keep that folding round. And anywhere this green stuff sort of lands, I'm going to have to retexture. So I want to keep as much of the original texture of the model as possible. So first thing, I'm just working out the sort of general shape I want. So next step, which is pretty much what I'm doing now, is I'm now sort of smoothing that out so it joins on both sides sort of naturally. So I'm going to bring in my rubber tool here to sort of help with that. And there's nothing better for doing sort of gradients onto smooth stuff like that. Okay, once we've got that the way we like it, I might let this sit and cure for a little bit. As I said, I might let it cure for a little bit, but we'll see how this goes. I should be alright actually. Just going to start putting dots in with the end of my sculpting tool. And what we're trying to replicate is the texture here. Thankfully we haven't had to replicate this because this is quite a complicated sort of layered fur effect. The main body is mostly just covered in these sort of little dapples. And I'm going to work those about halfway up my join. So while that cures, we'll figure out a base for him. Got just a 50mm MDF square. I think that's going to be about the right sort of base size. And I've got some cork and a selection of slate chippings. So I'm not sure about the cork, but the slate chippings I think is kind of what we want. Oh, so I think if we go with something like that, and the idea is I want to lift his face up a little bit. I think if that one goes about there, we could put another one sort of here. Makes it quite an interesting little shape. I quite like the fact that the curve in there kind of mirrors the curve of the tail. And it does what I want if we do that, lifts the thing up a bit. So I'm going to use a bit of the cork just to build up in here. And then when that's dry, I will carve that into the sort of shape that we need. Something like that. And then once this is fully cured, I'll pop a pin in this sort of foot section and then into the slate itself. and pin that down. Okay, so everything is cured and dried now. We've put a bit of filler on here. We didn't actually pin this in the end. What I actually did was filed the slate down so it was flat where this sort of foot section touched it. And I think that gave me more than enough surface area to stick enough glue in there. And I think that's going to be nice and sturdy, especially after the next stage. I'm just going to be throwing some PVA on the whole thing. So obviously all of this under here is going to get PVA. We're also going to get some PVA up here. And I think with the sand on, that is looking spot on. So I'm going to paint this using some of the colours I've been using on my Beastmen recently. Mostly sort of a Moonfang and Scrag Brown sort of colours. Okay, and here he is with a paint job. If you do notice some weird things in this video, that's because I started this video in September 23 and now it's March 24. So I've been, this guy's been put away for a little while, but I am really happy with this paint job. I think it looks really nice and old school. I'm pretty happy with the base come out. I'm not super keen on these tufts. They said dead grass, but they're a little bit too bright for my liking. But these are my little birch leaves. I think that's come out really nicely. And if we look at this guy and compare him to the one we're aiming for, I think we're pretty close, to be honest. Obviously the wings are different, but I've definitely got a nice little Manticore for any sort of old school adventures. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.